Hello, my name is Jenny Linder, and I am doing my presentation on the Pulse nightclub mass shooting that occurred in Orlando, Florida. So before I move forward, this is a content warning. This article and presentation discusses a hate crime that was specifically targeted towards those who identify as being a part of the LGBTQ plus community. So this may be difficult for some viewers and or readers to hear and listen to. And before moving forward, I think it's appropriate, especially with the topic, to acknowledge those who lost their lives that day, all 49 individuals doing what they loved the most, which was being themselves and celebrating life the way they felt like, the way they felt like celebrating their life. So an overview of the event. This event occurred on June 12th, 2016 in Orlando, Florida at the Pulse nightclub. It was an LGBTQ nightclub. A single gunman, came in and killed 49 individuals and injured 68 others. This was the second deadliest shooting by a single gunman and the biggest attack against the LGBTQ plus community. What that means is every 1 in 4 individuals that was at that Pulse nightclub that night got injured or killed. This was considered the worst terrorist attack since the 9/11 terrorist attack that occurred. Key players of the Pulse nightclub response. So I think it's important to point out this photo before talking about kind of the key players. But according to the literature I read, this photo represents the nightclub. And this was by the Orlando Police Department. So A, up in the corner, is where the gunman ended up parking his car, and he walked around the corner to the back door and went inside and started firing. The extra duty police officer that was on the scene, who was working at the nightclub, he was standing around A and heard the shots fired. And the shots started getting fired around 2 a.m. At 2:02, the extra duty police officer called it in. So 2 minutes later, and the Orlando Police Department immediately dispatched multiple units there without little to no knowledge of what was actually going on, as well as the emergency medical team. And then upon scene, the fire department showed up, SWAT, the DEA, and other key players in this response, even though it was after the fact, was the Orlando Regional Medical Center, as well as the president, vice president, and any other local agencies that may have been surrounding this community and wrapping their arms around them for support. So the response was similar to the Boston Marathon and Aurora shooting. According to literature I read, they really took the response and they learned things prior to this from the Boston Massacre and the Aurora movie theater shooting. And so the lessons that both of those massacres learned, the Orlando Police Department was trained on. And so when they went to respond to the Pulse nightclub, they already had these lessons that they learned from these previous events, and they knew some things not to do and things that they really needed to do, such as deploy 70 plus agents and units to the Pulse shooting. And what I always found fascinating with this was they didn't have a lot of information, but that didn't matter. They still deployed, and they still got as many professionals who could assist to the scene as possible. The public health entities that were involved. So, of course, local, state, and federal law enforcement, public safety leaders who helped disseminate some of the information, emergency medical technicians, the fire, media, multi-department police response. So when this occurred, they reached out to a multi different unit police departments, and multi units got sent over from across Orlando. the FBI, and the Drug Enforcement Administration, which their role was to really communicate with the family and be the leading force of the communication. And one of the key things that they learned in this, compared to the Aurora movie theater shooting, for example, was the communication to all the different entities. So to all the different police departments were not clear. There was not one chain of command, whereas there was more of a chain of command. All of them are listening to one leader, and it was one approach. What went well? So law enforcement took action with little to no accurate information. They just dove right on in and started working the scene. Orlando Police Department used swarm intelligence, which means that they used a multidisciplinary approach and used different community organizations, police department, fire department, and they all had a specific role to play. They took lessons from the previous massacres and learned how to communicate with the public and learned different response mechanisms to improve their response. And so previously, like for the Aurora shooting, for example, emergency medical services could not get through the parking lot because cars are backing it up. That was not the case in this effort. They really made the way for these emergency vehicles to get through and really deal with this situation as fast as they could. What could have been improved? Working with local businesses to improve information sharing and promote safety. What I mean by that is the local businesses surrounding the Pulse nightclub were unaware really of what was going on and how to protect the individuals that were currently inside of their establishments. Decision-making skills, so really just knowing what the next steps were. Even though they were following someone, it was still kind of iffy on who was playing what role. Consistent messaging, so everyone had a different story, a different number of individuals who ended up dying or who lost their lives. And so making sure that whoever is speaking has the same messaging across the board. And then overall awareness of available resources that could have been improved. That was one thing that they said was the police did not understand or know all the different resources they had at their hands. And so if they would have known that, potentially they could have had more of an outreach to the community or a different response to the community. Community preparedness and resiliency. So they, the police department had an excellent relationship with the LGBTQ plus community. They were part of multi groups as well as the African American and Hispanic population and groups. They were really just involved in making sure that their presence was known in these communities. Community leaders, churches, counselors, and schools got involved by showing up to the victims and the community daily and letting them know that they were there as a service or even a shoulder to lean on. And then community updates. So they started to discuss with small businesses, the impacts that this has had on them, especially those that were surrounding the Pulse nightclub, such as barbershops, smoke shops, that sort of thing, and working on a plan to get more individuals back in the stores, as well as preventing some safety measures that they were going to implement around that area. Lessons learned. So community partnerships are crucial to the success of the disaster response. And I think we learn this in every disaster or massacre that occurs, that a strong community and those who are strongly networked and put together are resilient, and they can really overcome something so dynamically devastating and respond to it and become out on the stronger side. And so just working with those partnerships, instilling trust and safety in those. Be more sensitive to the different culturally dynamic groups. So from the literature, it sounds like when they addressed the LGBTQ community, they were not being culturally sensitive with pronouns and addressing them the way they were identifying themselves as. And so just really working on that, learning to address questions and communications after the incident and making sure it's clear and concise communication and not different. And then having better communication methods for local businesses. So if something that tragically devastating is going on around certain businesses, having a way to communicate with them and let them know what's going on, and a way to protect those who are already inside those establishments. And these are my references. Overall, I think the response to the Pulse shooting was pretty exceptional. It's a pretty big tragedy for our nation. Me being a part of the LGBTQ community, and especially just having this community be targeted again in Colorado Springs is devastating. And I think every time something like this happens, we take something to learn from it. But that's all we can ask for. That's it.